Hello guys, what is happening and welcome to this video. So this video, I thought I'd do a video because Calgary just came out as something like the 3rd or 4th best place to live in the world. I think you know that these indexes that are made are total BS. They come out at multiple times of the year, different ones from different companies, and this one I just feel is a complete waste of time. So Calgary was voted number 3 best place to live in the world, but who was number 4? Well, it was Vancouver. And that really should have told everybody how accurate these stupid indexes are about predicting whether places are a good place to live or not. You know, the funny thing is the Canadian media got hold of this story, ran wild with it. Vancouver, Calgary, all the local news media outlets were publishing it, saying, look, we're such a great place to live in the world, it's fantastic, you know. And I think it's an absolute disservice to people, these indexes, because they're complete BS. You know, for one, the thing is, most of the things that they do to calculate these things are done through surveys. And you might say, well, Luke, that's okay. But it depends how those surveys are done, how many people, how accurate they are. Because the reality is that a lot of these surveys are done just based off how people feel. They're not based off any sort of fact or anything like that. So they essentially go to the public and go, hey, how do you feel about the crime? Yeah, it's okay, or whatever. And depending on where they go and ask people and how it's done, that can be just totally inaccurate, because as we know, most people do not live in reality. They live in this just kind of make-believe world where they just go from their car to the office to their house. They don't really see anything in between. So the thing is, obviously here in Calgary, crime trends are getting worse in the sense that crime is actually increasing. Now, crime is a pretty big thing when you move to any place. It's one thing that I think is really important. And the fact that Vancouver was 4th should have told everybody how BS this index is, because anybody who knows, who's been to Vancouver, knows that it is not safe at all. And it's the same in downtown Calgary as well. In downtown Calgary, it is not safe anymore. You know, I get seriously worried when I'm walking around down there, especially at weekends. I've tried to film down there, and it's just, there's a lot of mental people, there's a lot of drug addicts down there, and you know, it is a sad situation, but the city fails to do anything to alleviate the problem. In fact, they make the problem worse. So another thing that it didn't take into account, which I thought was a huge thing, is the weather. Obviously, the weather is a massive thing when you move to any place. And obviously, it was a thing that I totally messed up with when we came to Calgary. You know, Calgary has absolutely awful weather. Like, livability rating for weather should be a 1 out of 10, because the fact is it's absolutely freezing here in the winter, and then come summertime, guess what? You're either going to get smoke or it's going to be cold and rainy. This is not exactly the best weather in the world, and mostly these days it's smoky, which is even worse. I mean, you can't even go outside when it's like that. It's kind of horrible. So I think it's funny that they didn't take into account the weather either, and they didn't take into account cost of living and whether that's increasing or decreasing, which is obviously a major factor for people when they move to a place. So obviously Vancouver, again, being number 4, it should be obvious that these indexes are just ridiculous, because that is one of the most expensive places to live in North America. So obviously the cost of living is huge when people decide to move to a place. It's literally the only reason why people come to Calgary. Like, the main reason why people come here to Calgary is that the cost of living is lower than other cities in Canada. It's still high, it's just lower than other cities in Canada. So people feel like, I'll just go to Calgary, it'll be all right. But the cost of living is increasing significantly in every city, and that is not a good thing. That's not a good thing long term, because wages aren't increasing. And another thing which this index didn't take into account, which I thought was ridiculous, was inflation. Another thing that is just incredibly important, I think, to anybody making a decision about moving somewhere. So inflation is obviously important, because inflation is how fast goods are rising in costs. And, you know, the CPI is not accurate, but you can use it as a base level overview of how bad the inflation really is. And you can see that in Calgary, for example, it's one of the worst places in the country for inflation right now. So that just goes to show, once again, that these indexes are just a load of BS. And you know, a lot of people in Calgary, I know, have Calgary pride. They are okay, they're doing okay themselves, and there's basically a lot of selfish people here. Let's just get straight to the point. There's a lot of selfish people here who think because they're okay that everybody else is okay. Well, I'm not like that. I actually care about other people, and I actually speak to other people, see how they feel about Calgary, and I listen. Whereas most people, they're just like, well, I'm doing okay, Luke. I moved to Calgary and I bought a house. But anyway, I just think that's kind of insane. You know, we could afford to buy a house here, but the reality is this place just ain't livable for us. Like, when we think about the weather, for example, we think we could not put up with this long term. Like, there's no way in hell that we could put up with the weather here long term. Like, that would be depressing, like a depressing thing to think that we could be living here in later years. So I don't know, I think these livability indexes are a total load of garbage, and obviously I think I'm right there, because just look at number 4, which is Vancouver. So you can't really argue and say, oh yeah, you know, this is so accurate. But that's exactly what the media did. They ran with it. They said 3 cities in Canada, they're the best to live in the world. And that was published literally everywhere, and barely any. I think I saw one article that told people how that index was calculated, and obviously it's just absolutely awful. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like it, subscribe to the channel. If you didn't, dislike it, I don't really care, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.